One of the best experiences in a space game is often the ability to seamlessly land on a planet and fly over its surface. Just recently, Bethesda confirmed that at least one of these will not be possible in Starfield. And you know what? That is actually completely okay. The recent Starfield showcase then has raised a few questions about spaceflight and the procedural planets. So let's take a look at what's known so far and what's not known, and also why I feel some of these things that people believe might be a problem very likely are not a problem. There's also a whole load of new details that Todd Howard very recently revealed about the game, and I'm also going to be discussing those, so do stick around for that. So let's start with that planetary landing issue. A lot of people who watch this channel regularly are no doubt huge fans of space games, particularly Elite Dangerous and Star Citizen. Both of these games allow players to seamlessly land on their planets, and in fact that capability is a big part of those games' identities. That of course is the ability to freely explore their vast game worlds. Bethesda, however, have decided to take a different approach with Starfield. They have stated that very early on in development they focused on making the space aspect of Starfield one reality and the planetary surface aspect of the game another reality. These two sides of the game then have separate gameplay without a seamless transition between the two. However, it's clear that they are interconnected. In large part, this is achieved by the very real existence of your spaceship, which of course exists on both sides of the game. But why did Bethesda decide to keep two sides of the game separated? Well, it appears to come down to development time. Todd Howard explained that it requires significant engineering to create seamless environments from planet to planet. And anyone who has followed space game development for any length of time will be fully aware of this. It is one of the largest challenges for both Star Citizen and Elite Dangerous. Bethesda believe that the time, resources and effort required to achieve this goal are really not worth it in the grand scheme of things, and ultimately it doesn't add to the experience that Starfield is aiming to deliver. So this might seem a bit weird to you if you're looking at Starfield from a purely a space game perspective. But take a step back and take a look at Starfield as first and foremost an RPG with a lot of space-themed aspects, then it all starts to make sense. The experience with Elder Scrolls and Fallout series is one of living and exploring vast open worlds. The worlds are full of quests, cities, villages, people, monsters, equipment, dungeons and more. Players generally are free to interact with all of this in any way they see fit. That is the primary focus for these types of games. So the question quickly becomes, does the ability to fly through an atmosphere add to this? I'm personally inclined to agree that Bethesda are correct. It doesn't add to that traditional Elder Scrolls and Fallout experience. The ability, however, to explore multiple worlds certainly does, as well as the ability to fly through space, of course. All of these potentially add to the experience significantly, assuming of course that Bethesda can actually pull it off. Now, the question of whether or not we can fly around the surface of planets and through the sky is another question entirely. At this point, I'm not expecting that to happen. I think it's probably unlikely, but Bethesda still haven't actually discussed that particular side of things. At any rate, what are your thoughts on the inability to directly land on planets through seamless transitions? Is this something that bothers you? Would you like to see it? Do you think it would add to the game? Or do you think that Bethesda are quite correct on this one in saying that it wouldn't really add anything of value to the traditional Elder Scrolls and the Skyrim type experience? Do let me know your thoughts on this in the comments section below. So, this subject on planets and various other space-based activities brings us quite nicely onto the new details that Bethesda recently revealed through an interview with IGN. So, starting with the subject of those planets, 1,000 visitable worlds, each of which you can land on at any location and fully explore. How many of these are going to be handcrafted? Well, we don't know the exact number of handcrafted locations, but Bethesda have stated that many of these planets will be procedurally generated, and a fact that was, well, pretty obvious, I'd assume, at least to most people out there. Now, it seems that Starfield will have a lot of procedural generation. Bethesda, though, were quick to point out that most of their titles, in fact nearly all of their titles, have always used a lot of procedural generation. So this really is nothing new. What is new is the scale they're trying to aim for here. They say the trick this time around was using the technique that they've developed with procedural generation on a planetary scale. So it's a bit of a challenging and sticky subject, isn't it? And it's one that I've looked around a bit on the internet just to try and get a feel and the impression of what people are thinking about this. And there definitely seems to be some understandable concern that a lot of the planets out there, 1,000 planets is a lot after all, but many of these planets will either be empty or repetitive. In the IGN interview, Todd Howard appeared to confirm that yes, this would certainly be the case. He made it clear though that the intent of all these planets is not to provide unlimited content that rivals handcrafted content. Instead, the intent is to give players additional options. In this case, one of those options is about presenting players with the ability to roam an unexplored planet and have random encounters. That is basically a big part of both the Skyrim experience as well as the recent Fallout experience that just scaled up. After all, you can walk out into the desert, walk out into the frozen wastelands, and just eventually have a random encounter or a random experience. Sometimes that's an encounter with an NPC, other times it's an encounter or discovery of a cave or an unexplored dungeon. This then is definitely something I feel appealing to the idea of Starfield and the idea of many other worlds out there. The idea to just land on a random planet and go exploring, so encountering a random monster maybe, finding an unabandoned or lost outpost, or perhaps even encountering a spaceship that happens to be landed in one location. Speculation of course, but that would be perfectly in keeping with what we've seen in Elder Scrolls games as well as Fallout games, just scaled up a little bit like I say. But of course, people are quite right to feel that if it's scaled up too much, it's soon going to get very repetitive. So that's definitely something to keep in mind, something to be wary of. We don't know yet how that's going to play out until we've got it in our hands. Like I say, an understandable concern without any doubt. Now, moving away from the subject of procedural generation and onto the subject of handcrafted content, well, apparently, from what Bethesda is saying here, Starfield will have more of that than any other Bethesda title so far. This will include a 30 to 40 hour main quest campaign, as well as 4 large handcrafted cities. New Atlantis, which we got a glimpse of in the video, will be the biggest of these and is actually the biggest city Bethesda have ever made. Now, one subject I'm especially interested in here is the city of Neon. Neon, of course, is a city completely surrounded by water. One of the biggest exports from this planet will be fish. So the question here for me is the amount of water surrounding this city. Is this a water world or is it just in the middle of an ocean? But either way, it does raise a bit of a significant question. And that largely because we haven't yet seen it demonstrated in actual gameplay. We've only seen concept art for it. So what's got me wondering is, well, with it being possible to land anywhere on a planet, how will that actually work when it comes to water and oceans? Further, how would a player actually travel around such a world, assuming the world was a water world? Well, 2 thoughts come to mind here. The first is that it simply won't be possible to land on any location on such a world. Or at the very least, if the world's not a water world, then you just won't be able to land on or near oceans. The second thought then, and this one is maybe a bit of a stretch, but the idea of vehicles, in this case specifically boats. But yeah, like I say, this one feels like a bit of a stretch, so really, who knows? But obviously, without vehicles, it's going to take a long time to explore all of these planets on foot. Which actually brings up another question I've seen other people raise, whether or not players will be able to fly around the surface of planets. Well, at this point, that's starting to seem unlikely. It seems as though ships will just be a fixed point on a planet location. Once you've landed, you've landed. And this thought would be kind of backed up by Bethesda confirming that spaceflight is a separate reality, a separate area of the game, to that of planetary surfaces. So again, I guess for now at least, we'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, walking around is going to take a lot of time without some sort of vehicle. Now, another thing that Bethesda did reiterate on here is that yes, it will be possible to mod Starfield. In fact, they really want to provide a lot of support to the modding community when it comes to Starfield. Of course, that means a huge amount of possibilities, including the ability for the player base to fix any real problems or bugs with the game itself. Yeah, it's something that often happens when it comes to Bethesda titles. Certainly it shouldn't be the way it is, but it does seem to be the way it is. Either way though, plenty of new content from the modding fanbase will be a great thing to see for the future of Starfield and will likely extend its longevity quite a bit. Another new interesting point was in relation to ship combat. Now, how will this work? There's a lot of speculation over how Arcadia will be or how sim-based it will be. Whilst Bethesda didn't go into too much detail on that, they did mention that it will be fairly slow-paced, so think MechWarrior rather than full-on arcade. During ship-to-ship combat, it will also be important to balance power between various different systems within the ship. So this will likely add a little bit to the element of skill for ship-to-ship combat, and will also likely be affected by the way you build your ship. So onto a final few notes here then. It will be possible to steal ships that you encounter. For example, in space, you'll be able to disable a ship, board it, and if you choose, steal it. This naturally raises another question: just how many ships would it be possible for a player to own? At any rate, that pretty much covers all the latest details about Starfield. Oh, and by the way, I'm sure you've probably heard about this already at this point, but Bethesda confirmed that they will be working on Fallout 5 once they've released Elder Scrolls 6, so yeah, nice little confirmation there. That then brings us to an end of this video. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys and girls next time.